You know what hurts more than cancer? Finding out your own son used your illness as an opportunity to destroy you. I still remember that morning in April when David called me. I had just finished my last chemotherapy session 3 weeks earlier. My hair was starting to grow back in small, soft patches, and for the first time in 18 months, I felt like Margaret Hayes might actually survive. I was 62 years old, sitting in my kitchen with weak tea and dry toast, the only things my stomach could handle those days, when my phone rang. Mom. David's voice was different, lighter somehow, like when he was a little boy asking me to push him higher on the swings. Jennifer and I have something to tell you. Can you come over for dinner tonight? Of course I said yes. When had I ever said no to David? Even during my treatments, even when I could barely stand, I had dragged myself to his apartment whenever he needed me. That evening, I put on my best wig, applied some lipstick to give my pale face some color, and drove the 40 minutes to their apartment in the city. Before we go any further into this, I just want to say, if you feel a connection to these stories, a small click on that like button and subscribe would mean more to me than you know. It lets me know I'm not just speaking into the void, that you're really here with me. Alright, let's continue. The moment I walked through their door, I knew something special was happening. There were candles everywhere. Jennifer was wearing the pearl earrings I'd given her for Christmas, and my David was down on one knee in the middle of their living room. Mom, he said, his eyes sparkling with tears, Jennifer and I want to get married. But we can't imagine doing it without your blessing. You fought so hard to stay with us, to beat cancer. Now we want to celebrate life with you. Will you help us plan the wedding of our dreams? I started crying immediately. Not gentle tears, the ugly, shoulder-shaking kind that comes when joy hits you after months of fear. Jennifer ran to hug me, and David wrapped his arms around both of us. We stood there in their little apartment, 3 people celebrating the promise of a future I wasn't sure I'd live to see. We want to do it right, Mom, David said later that evening over dinner. A real wedding. The kind you and Dad never got to have. I want to give Jennifer everything, the dress, the venue, the honeymoon. But... His voice trailed off, and Jennifer squeezed his hand. We've been saving, but with the economy and our student loans. Jennifer looked down at her plate. We understand if it's too much to ask, especially after everything you've been through. How much do you need? I asked without hesitation. David exchanged a glance with Jennifer. The wedding planner says for what we envision, about $200,000. But Mom, we're not asking for all of it. We have about $20,000 saved. $200,000. The number sat in the air like a physical thing. It was more money than I'd ever spent on anything except my house. The house that Robert, my late husband, and I had bought 35 years ago for $70,000. The house where we raised David. The house that was now worth nearly $500,000 thanks to the neighborhood development. I'll handle it, I heard myself say. Mom, no. David started to protest, but his eyes. God, his eyes were so hopeful. We couldn't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. I placed my hand over his. You're my only child, David. What else am I going to do with that house? It's too big for just me anyway. I'll take out a mortgage. The bank already pre-approved me for a home equity line of credit during my treatment in case I needed it for medical bills. Jennifer started crying then. Real tears that made her mascara run. Mrs. Hayes, I promise we'll pay you back. Once David gets his promotion and I finish my master's degree. I waved her words away. This is my gift to you both. My investment in your happiness. The next morning, I was at the bank when it opened. Mr. Patterson, who had been our banker for 20 years, tried to talk me out of it. Margaret, he said gently, are you sure about this? $200,000 is a significant amount. With your fixed income and recent medical expenses. My son is getting married, Mr. Patterson. I survived cancer to see this day. Please process the loan. 3 days later, I handed David a cashier's check. He stared at it like it wasn't real, then pulled me into the tightest hug. Mom, I don't know what to say. Just be happy, sweetheart. That's all I want. Over the next 2 months, I watched my son and Jennifer plan their dream wedding. Or rather, I watched from a distance. Whenever I offered to come to vendor meetings or dress shopping, Jennifer would pat my hand sweetly. Mrs. Hayes, you've done so much already. Just rest and recover. We want you strong and healthy for the big day. I found it odd that they never asked my opinion about flowers or music or food. When I was planning my wedding 38 years ago, I had called my mother about every tiny detail. But I told myself that times were different. Jennifer was independent, modern. She didn't need her future mother-in-law hovering over every decision. My sister Linda, however, seemed to be very involved. She was only 58, 4 years younger than me, but she acted like she was Jennifer's best friend. They went to cake tastings together. They chose centerpieces together. When I mentioned feeling left out, Linda laughed. "Oh Margaret, stop being so sensitive. Young people need space. Besides, you should be focusing on your health, not wedding stress." The wedding was set for September 15th, 5 months after my last chemo treatment. As the date approached, I noticed more strange things. David never showed me the venue. Jennifer was vague about her dress. When I asked about the guest list, they said they were keeping it intimate. "It's about quality, not quantity, Mom," David explained. "We don't want a circus. Just the people who matter most." I accepted every excuse, every explanation. Because when you love someone the way I loved David, you see what you want to see. You ignore the voice in your head whispering that something isn't right. You tell yourself you're being paranoid, that the cancer treatments have made you suspicious and difficult. 2 weeks before the wedding, I went to Jennifer's bridal shower. Linda had organized it at her house. Of course Linda had organized it. There were only 8 women there, including me. Jennifer's mother had passed away years ago, and apparently, she didn't have many close friends. During the gift opening, I watched Jennifer unwrap towels and kitchen gadgets with polite enthusiasm. But when she opened my gift, a diamond bracelet that had belonged to Robert's mother, she barely looked at it. "It's beautiful, Mrs. Hayes." "Thank you." That night, I called David. "Sweetheart, is everything okay with Jennifer?" She seemed distant at the shower. "Mom, please." David's voice had an edge to it. "She's stressed about the wedding. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I apologized immediately. "Of course, you're right. I'm sorry. I just want everything to be perfect for you both." "It will be, Mom. Thanks to you, it will be." The night before the wedding, I couldn't sleep. I stood in my bedroom, looking at Robert's picture on the nightstand. I wished so desperately that he was there. He would have known if something was wrong. He always had better instincts about people than I did. "Our boy is getting married tomorrow," I whispered to his photo. "I gave him everything, Robert. Everything we built together. I hope I did the right thing." The morning of September 15th dawned clear and bright. I put on the navy blue dress I'd bought specially for the occasion. Jennifer had said the mothers were wearing navy. I had my hair professionally styled to hide the spots where it was still growing back. I even wore the prosthetic breast forms the hospital had given me after my double mastectomy, wanting to look normal in photos. Linda picked me up at noon, even though the ceremony wasn't until 4. "We need to get there early for pictures," she explained, but her smile seemed forced. During the drive, Linda kept checking her phone and muttering about timing. When I asked what was wrong, she just said wedding day jitters affected everyone, even the aunt of the groom. We arrived at what I thought was the venue, a beautiful historic mansion I'd seen in wedding magazines. But Linda led me around to a small side building. "This is where the mother of the groom gets ready," she said, opening a door to a plain room with a single chair and a mirror. "Jennifer wanted you to have privacy. You know, with your condition." "My condition? You mean my cancer?" Linda's face flushed. "I just meant, you need rest. The main venue is so chaotic. Stay here, and I'll come get you when it's time." She left before I could protest. I sat in that cold, empty room for 2 hours. No one came to check on me. No photographer asked for mother-son photos. No one brought me a corsage. Finally, at 3:45, Linda reappeared. "Quick, we're about to start." She practically ran me to a small chapel behind the main building. When we entered, my heart sank. There were maybe 20 people there. No flowers except for a simple bouquet at the altar. No musicians, just recorded music from a portable speaker. "Where is everyone?" I whispered to Linda. "This is everyone," she hissed back. "Now shush, here comes Jennifer." Jennifer walked down the aisle in a simple white dress I'd never seen before. It wasn't the elaborate gown she'd described to me. David stood at the altar looking handsome but distracted, checking his phone even as his bride approached. The ceremony lasted exactly 15 minutes. The officiant rushed through the vows like he had somewhere else to be. When David kissed Jennifer, it was quick, almost businesslike. Then everyone was moving toward a side door. "Time for the reception," Linda announced, but when I tried to follow, she grabbed my arm. "Oh, Margaret, actually, there's been a change. The reception is very small. Industry people for David's networking. You understand." I didn't understand. I didn't understand at all. But Mom needs to be at the reception, David said, suddenly appearing. It's fine, Aunt Linda. Mom, come on. The reception was in a conference room. A conference room. With fluorescent lighting and folding chairs. There were sandwich platters from a grocery store and a sheet cake that said congratulations in generic blue frosting. No band. No dancing. No champagne toasts. I sat at a table in the corner, watching my son and his new wife work the room like they were at a business meeting. They barely looked at each other. Jennifer had changed out of her wedding dress into a business suit. When someone clinked a glass for them to kiss, they pecked each other on the cheek like acquaintances. After an hour, David came over to me. Mom, we're heading out. Early flight tomorrow. Flight? For your honeymoon? He shifted uncomfortably. Actually, it's a business opportunity. Jennifer's cousin has a real estate deal in Florida. We need to check it out. You're going to look at real estate on your honeymoon? David's face hardened. Mom, not everyone can afford to waste time. Some of us have to think about our future. Thanks for everything today. We'll call you when we get back. He kissed my forehead, a quick, distracted gesture, and then he was gone. Jennifer waved from across the room but didn't come to say goodbye. Linda drove me home in silence. When she pulled into my driveway, she finally spoke. You did a good thing, Margaret. Giving them that money. They needed it more than you know. What do you mean? She caught herself. Just, they're building a future. Sometimes you have to invest in the next generation, right? That night, I sat in my empty house, still in my navy dress, staring at the mortgage papers on my kitchen table. $200,000. I'd given my son $200,000 for a wedding that felt like a business transaction. No photos with the mother of the groom. No mother-son dance. No tearful speeches about family and love. I called David's phone, but it went straight to voicemail. I tried Jennifer's with the same result. Finally, I called the venue, the beautiful mansion I'd thought was hosting my son's wedding. I'm sorry, the event coordinator said when I asked about the Hayes Morrison wedding. We didn't have any weddings booked today. Are you sure you have the right venue? I hung up without answering. Then I opened my laptop and started searching. The chapel where the ceremony took place? It rented for $500. The conference room was part of the same budget package. Total cost for what I'd witnessed couldn't have been more than $2,000. Where had the rest of the money gone? I thought about calling the police, but what would I say? My son had a cheap wedding instead of an expensive one? That wasn't a crime. Taking money from your mother wasn't illegal if she gave it freely. And I had handed over everything without question, without contracts, without even asking to see receipts or plans. Because I trusted him. Because he was my son. Because I thought love meant never having to question, never having to doubt, never having to protect yourself from the people who were supposed to protect you. I was wrong. And that was only the beginning of discovering just how wrong I had been about everything. 3 weeks passed after the wedding. 3 weeks of unanswered calls and messages that were read but never responded to. Then Linda started coming around more often. Margaret, you look terrible, she said one afternoon, letting herself in with the spare key I'd given her years ago. When was the last time you ate a proper meal? I couldn't remember. The betrayal I felt was eating me from the inside, more aggressive than any cancer. But I couldn't tell Linda that. She wouldn't understand. Or worse, maybe she would. David and Jennifer are back from Florida, she mentioned casually while making tea in my kitchen. They found an amazing investment property. You should be proud, your son has such a good business mind. Have you seen them? I asked, trying to keep my voice neutral. Oh yes, we had dinner last night. All 3 of us. We needed to discuss some family matters. Family matters. Without me. The mother who had just mortgaged her house for them. What kind of family matters? I asked. Linda's hand paused for just a moment as she poured the tea. Nothing you need to worry about. Just some financial planning. You know David, always thinking ahead. That night, I couldn't stop thinking about Linda's words. Financial planning. The 3 of them. Together. I decided to drive by David's apartment, just to see if his car was there. I needed to know he was real, that my son still existed somewhere in this city. His car was there. So was Jennifer's. And so was Linda's. I parked across the street and watched their shadows moving behind the curtains of the lit apartment. They were laughing. I could see them passing documents back and forth, Linda pointing at something on what looked like a laptop screen. At one point, David stood up and high-fived both women. They were celebrating something. I sat in my car for 2 hours, waiting for Linda to leave. When she finally did, she was carrying a folder thick with papers. She practically skipped to her car. My sister, my 58-year-old sister, skipping like a teenager with a secret. The next morning, I called my friend Ruth. She'd been my nurse during chemo, and we'd stayed close. Ruth had a talent for finding information. Her daughter worked at the county clerk's office. "Can you do me a favor?" I asked. "Can you have your daughter look up any recent property transactions involving David Hayes, Jennifer Morrison Hayes, or Linda Mitchell?" "Margaret, what's going on?" "I just need to know, Ruth, please." 2 days later, Ruth called me back. Her voice was strange, careful. "Margaret, you need to sit down." I'm sitting. They bought a property together. All three of them. A commercial building downtown worth $750,000. They put down $200,000, cash, 3 days after the wedding. The deed lists all three as equal partners in something called DJL Enterprises LLC. DJL. David. Jennifer. Linda. I couldn't breathe. Ruth was still talking, but I couldn't hear her over the roaring in my ears. My sister. My own sister had conspired with my son to steal my money. The mortgage I'd taken out, thinking it was for my son's happiness, had gone straight into their business venture. But that wasn't even the worst part. Ruth continued, "Margaret, there's more. My daughter did some additional checking. She found something else. David and Jennifer, they got married 2 years ago. There's a marriage certificate on file from Vegas dated September 20th, 2023. 2 years. They had already been married for 2 years. The wedding was fake. The entire thing had been a performance. The tears, the hugs, the grateful promises, all of it was acting. They had played me like a fool in my weakest moment, when I was still recovering from cancer, still grateful to be alive, still desperate to be part of my son's joy. That evening, Linda came over again. This time, I was ready for her. "You look better today," she said, settling into Robert's old chair like she owned it. "Getting some color back in your face." I watched her carefully. "Linda, can I ask you something?" "Of course. Do you think David and Jennifer are happy?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "They're very happy." "Why do you ask?" "I was just thinking about the wedding. It seemed so rushed. So small. Not at all what they described when they asked for the money." Linda's face tightened almost imperceptibly. "Well, you know young people. They change their minds. The important thing is they're married now. Building their future. Building their future with my money, you mean?" The words hung in the air between us. Linda went very still. "What are you talking about?" "I know about the building, Linda. I know about DJL Enterprises. I know you're all partners." She stood up slowly, smoothing her skirt. "I don't know where you're getting your information, but I also know David and Jennifer got married 2 years ago in Vegas." Linda's mask finally slipped. Her face contorted into something ugly, something I'd never seen before in my little sister's features. "So what?" she snapped. "So what if they were already married? You have more money than you need, sitting in this big house all alone. David is your son. He deserved that money. He lied to me. You all lied to me. We gave you what you wanted, a wedding to attend, a reason to feel important. You got to play mother of the groom, Margaret. Isn't that what you wanted?" "I wanted the truth." Linda laughed, actually laughed. "The truth? The truth is that David needed that money for his future. The truth is that you were going to waste it on medical bills and nursing homes eventually anyway. At least this way it stays in the family. You're not his family, Linda. You're his aunt. I'm his mother. Some mother." She moved toward the door. "You smothered him his whole life, controlling him with guilt and obligation. He came to me for help because he knew you'd never just give him the money. You'd make him dance for it, make him prove his love over and over. Well, congratulations, Margaret. You got your show. Get out of my house." "Gladly. But Margaret?" Linda paused at the door. "If you try to make trouble about this, remember. David has power of attorney over you. We made sure of that when you were doing your chemo, remember? When you were so sick and scared you signed whatever he put in front of you. You try to fight us on this, and we'll have you declared incompetent so fast your head will spin. A cancer patient with memory issues from chemo, no judge would question it." She left, slamming the door behind her. I sat in the sudden silence, processing what she'd said. Power of attorney. I vaguely remembered signing something during my worst period of treatment, when I could barely stay conscious between sessions. David had said it was just in case something happened, just so he could handle my affairs if I couldn't. I called Ruth immediately. "They're threatening me," I told her. They say they'll have me declared incompetent if I try to get my money back. Over my dead body, Ruth said fiercely. Margaret, we're going to fight this. But we need to be smart about it. Can you get to my house tomorrow? We need to make a plan. That night, I went through every document in my filing cabinet. I found the power of attorney paperwork, dated from my 3rd month of chemotherapy. My signature was shaky, barely recognizable. I didn't remember signing it, but there it was. David had complete control over my medical and financial decisions if I was deemed unable to make them myself. I also found something else. Bank statements from David's old savings account that he'd left behind when he moved out 10 years ago. The account had been closed, but the final statement showed a balance of $38,000. Where had that money gone? He'd told me he only had $20,000 saved for the wedding. I started making a list of every lie, every deception, every red flag I'd ignored. The expensive honeymoon that turned into a business trip. The elaborate wedding that became a conference room reception. The months of planning that I was excluded from. Linda's involvement in everything. Then I remembered something. Jennifer's bridal shower. The way she'd barely looked at my gift, my former mother-in-law's diamond bracelet. Of course she hadn't cared. She'd already been married to my son for 2 years. That bracelet meant nothing to her because she'd already been through all the real moments, the actual proposal, the genuine first dance, the heartfelt vows, without me. I went to my jewelry box and looked for the bracelet. It wasn't there. Neither were several other pieces I'd given Jennifer over the past 2 years. My grandmother's pearl necklace. The gold earrings Robert had given me for our 25th anniversary. All gifts I'd bestowed on Jennifer to welcome her to the family. All gone. I drove to David's apartment at 3 in the morning. I used my spare key, the one he didn't know I still had, and let myself in. They were both asleep in their bedroom. I moved through their apartment like a ghost, looking for evidence of my jewelry, of my money, of any trace of the mother who had loved them. I found it all in a safe in their closet. The safe was open. David had always been careless about security. Inside were my jewelry pieces, documents for DJL Enterprises, and a file labeled Mom's House. I opened it with trembling hands. Inside were real estate comparisons, contractor estimates for renovations, and a business plan for converting my house into rental units. The projected date for the renovation start was January 1st. 3 months away. There was a sticky note on top in David's handwriting. Once M is in assisted living. They weren't just planning to take my money. They were planning to take my home. To put me away somewhere and convert my house. Robert's and my house, into rental property for their real estate empire. I took photos of everything with my phone. Then I saw another document that made my blood run cold. It was a brochure for a memory care facility called Sunset Manor. Someone had circled the long-term care option and written in the margin, Medicare covers after 90 days. Private pay approximately $8,000 per month. House rental income will cover this plus profit. They had already picked out where they were going to put me. I heard movement from the bedroom and quickly closed the safe, leaving everything exactly as I'd found it. I slipped out of the apartment and drove home, my hands shaking so badly I could barely hold the steering wheel. When I got home, I called Ruth even though it was 4 in the morning. They're planning to put me in a memory care facility, I said. They have it all planned out. My money, my house, my life. They're going to take everything. Ruth was quiet for a moment. Then she said, not if we get them first. Margaret, I need you to listen very carefully. My daughter's boyfriend is a private investigator. He specializes in elder abuse cases. Can you come to my house right now? Bring everything you have. I gathered all my documents, my photos, my lists of lies. As I drove to Ruth's house in the pre-dawn darkness, I thought about Linda's words. Some mother, she'd said. Was she right? Had I been so controlling that I'd driven my son to this? No. No mother's imperfection justified this kind of betrayal. This wasn't about my failures as a parent. This was about greed, pure and simple. My son, my sister, and my daughter-in-law had looked at me, a cancer survivor, a widow, a woman who had given them nothing but love, and seen nothing but dollar signs. But they had underestimated me. They thought cancer had made me weak. They thought grief had made me stupid. They thought love made me blind. They were about to learn how wrong they were. Ruth's daughter's boyfriend was named Marcus, and he looked like he'd seen every ugly thing humans could do to each other. He sat across from me at Ruth's kitchen table, reviewing my photos and documents with the detached efficiency of someone who'd witnessed worse. This is good, he said finally. But we need more. We need recorded conversations, financial records, proof of intent. Right now, they could claim the wedding money was a gift and that they're just concerned about your health. They've been married for 2 years, I said. The whole wedding was fraudulent. Morally, yes. Legally, it's gray. You gave them money for a wedding. They had a wedding ceremony, even if they were already married. Unless you have proof that they explicitly told you they weren't already married when asking for money, it's their word against yours. Ruth poured me another cup of coffee. It was 6 in the morning now, and I hadn't slept in 32 hours. But I felt more awake than I had in months. What about the power of attorney? I asked. David got me to sign it when I was barely conscious from chemo. Marcus pulled up something on his laptop. According to hospital records, you were discharged and listed as competent that day. No physician noted any mental impairment. Again, it would be your word against his. So they're going to get away with it? Not if we're smart about this. Marcus leaned forward. Mrs. Hayes, have you ever heard of a controlled revelation? I shook my head. It's when you let the perpetrators think they're winning while you document everything. You need to make them feel comfortable enough to reveal their true intentions. Can you do that? Can you pretend to be the confused, weak mother they think you are? I thought about it. Could I look my son in the eye and pretend I didn't know what he'd done? Could I sit across from my sister and not scream at her betrayal? Yes, I said. If it means getting justice, yes. Marcus smiled for the first time. Good. Here's what we're going to do. The plan was elegant in its simplicity. I would invite David and Jennifer over for dinner, act confused about my finances, and express worry about my future. Marcus would set up recording devices throughout my house, all legal in my own home. The goal was to get them to discuss their plans openly. But first, I needed to do something else. I went to see my lawyer, Thomas Crawford. He'd handled Robert's estate and had been our family attorney for 20 years. When I told him everything, his face went pale. Margaret, this is... I don't even have words. Your own son? I need to know what my options are, Thomas. He pulled out a legal pad and started writing. First, we can challenge the power of attorney based on undue influence and your medical condition at the time. Second, we can file a civil suit for fraud regarding the wedding money. Third, if we can prove conspiracy to commit elder abuse, that's criminal. What about my house? Your house is safe for now. The mortgage is in your name only. They can't do anything without your signature, and if they try to use the power of attorney for that, we'll file an immediate injunction. I felt a small relief. At least they couldn't take my home while I was still living in it. Thomas, I said, can you draw up a new will? One that leaves everything to charity? He looked at me sadly. Are you sure? My son is already dead to me. He died the day he decided I was nothing more than a bank account. The dinner was scheduled for Saturday night. I spent 3 days preparing, both practically and emotionally. Marcus came over Friday evening to set up the recording equipment. Tiny devices in the living room, kitchen, and dining room, all feeding to his laptop in his van parked down the street. Remember, he said, you need to seem vulnerable but not suspicious. Confused but not completely helpless. You want them to think you're declining but still capable of being manipulated. Saturday arrived gray and drizzly, matching my mood. I cooked David's favorite meal, pot roast with carrots and potatoes, the same thing I'd made for every birthday since he was 5 years old. The familiar smell made me sick. They arrived 30 minutes late, without apology. David barely hugged me, and Jennifer air-kissed my cheek like we were acquaintances at a social function. The house looks good, Mom, David said, but I heard the assessment in his voice. He wasn't seeing his childhood home. He was seeing square footage and rental potential. We sat down to dinner, and I began my performance. I'm so glad you're both here, I said, letting my voice quaver slightly. I've been feeling so confused lately. The bills, the mortgage, it's all becoming too much. Jennifer and David exchanged a look. What do you mean, Mom? David asked, leaning forward with fake concern. I don't know. Sometimes I can't remember if I've paid things. Yesterday, I couldn't find my car keys for 2 hours. They were in the refrigerator. I laughed weakly. Maybe the chemo did more damage than we thought. Jennifer reached across the table and patted my hand. Her touch made my skin crawl. That must be so frightening, she said. David and I have been talking. Maybe it's time to consider getting you some help. Help? David jumped in. There are wonderful facilities now, Mom. Not like the old nursing homes. These are communities where you could have friends, activities, medical care right there if you need it. But this is my home. Mom, David's voice took on that edge I now recognized as his business tone. This house is too big for you. You're rattling around here all alone. And the maintenance, Can you really keep up with it? I've been managing fine. Have you? Jennifer asked. Linda told us you've been forgetting to eat. That she found spoiled food in your refrigerator. That you called her 3 times one day asking the same question. None of that was true. Linda had lied to them, or they were lying to me about Linda. It didn't matter. They were building a case. I let my eyes fill with tears, not fake ones. Real tears for the son I'd lost. I just don't want to be a burden, I whispered. You're not a burden, David said quickly. But Mom, we need to be practical. This house, with some updates, it could generate significant rental income. That money could pay for the best care facility. You'd never have to worry about anything again. There it was. The first admission. But where would you get the money for updates? I asked innocently. David smiled. Actually, that's something else we wanted to discuss. The business Jennifer, Aunt Linda, and I started, it's doing really well. We could buy the house from you. Keep it in the family. Buy it? But I thought you said I should go into a facility. David's mask slipped for just a second. Right, well, we'd buy it and then manage it for you. The profits would pay for your care. It's perfect, really. How much would you buy it for? David pulled out his phone, pretending to calculate something I was sure he'd already memorized. Market value is about $450,000. Minus the mortgage you just took out, minus renovation costs, we could probably do $200,000. $200,000. For a house worth $450,000. The exact amount I'd given them for their fake wedding. That seems low, I said carefully. Mom, be realistic. Jennifer's voice had hardened. Who else is going to buy it? You need this to happen quickly, before your condition gets worse. My condition? David stood up abruptly. Mom, I'm going to be straight with you. Aunt Linda is worried you're developing dementia. The forgetfulness, the confusion about money, the paranoid accusations you've been making. What accusations? About the wedding money. Linda said you called her screaming that we stole from you. That's not rational, Mom. We had a wedding. You were there. But it wasn't the wedding you described. It wasn't what the money was for. David sighed dramatically. See? This is what we're talking about. You gave us a gift, and now you're having buyer's remorse or memory issues or something. This is why we need to step in before you do something really irrational. Like what? Like giving away your money to strangers or falling for a scam or hurting yourself. David sat back down and took my hand. His touch was cold. Mom, if you don't let us help you voluntarily, we might have to take legal action. For your own good. Legal action? Jennifer pulled out a folder from her purse. We've consulted with an elder care attorney. Given your recent behavior, your medical history, and the power of attorney David already has, we could petition for conservatorship. Conservatorship. They wanted complete control over my life, my finances, my freedom. When? I whispered. When would this happen? David squeezed my hand, and I fought not to pull away. We're hoping it doesn't come to that. If you agree to sell us the house and move into Sunset Manor, we've already got you on the waiting list. We wouldn't need to do anything legal. You could maintain your dignity. Sunset Manor. The same facility from the brochure in their safe. I need to think about this. Of course. David stood, and Jennifer followed. But Mom, don't take too long. The unit at Sunset Manor will be available next month. It's a good one. Ground floor, garden view. You'd like it. They left without helping clear the table, without hugging me goodbye, without a single word of thanks for the dinner I'd cooked. I waited until I saw their car turn the corner, then I called Marcus. Did you get it? Every word, he said. They just confessed to conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud, and attempted extortion. But Margaret, we need more. We need Linda on record too. She won't come over. Not after our last conversation. Then you'll have to go to her. Can you do that? I thought about my sister. My little sister who I'd protected from bullies in school, who I'd helped through her divorce, who I'd trusted with my spare key and my secrets. Yes, I said. I can do that. The next morning, I called Linda. You were right, I said, making my voice small and defeated. About everything. I need help. Can I come over? I don't want to do this alone. There was a pause, then Linda's voice, triumphant. Of course, Margaret. Come over this afternoon. We'll sort everything out. Marcus gave me a recording device to wear. It looked like a button on my cardigan. He would be parked outside Linda's house, listening and recording everything. When Linda opened her door, she was smiling. The kind of smile a spider might give a fly. "Oh, Margaret," she said, pulling me into a hug. "I'm so glad you're being reasonable." We sat in her living room, the one I'd helped her decorate after her divorce, using my own money when she couldn't afford furniture. "David told me about your conversation," she said. "I think Sunset Manor is a wonderful choice." Very dignified. "Linda," I said, "can I ask you something? Were you part of this from the beginning? The wedding, I mean?" She laughed. "Oh, Margaret. Always so dramatic. It wasn't some big conspiracy. David came to me 2 years ago, after they got married in Vegas. They needed money to start their lives, but they knew you'd never just give it to them. Why not? I'd have given David anything. Would you? Really? Or would you have attached strings, conditions, guilt trips?" Linda leaned back in her chair. "You've always been controlling, Margaret. Even with Robert, you had to manage everything. David needed to be free of that. So you helped him lie to me?" "I helped him get what he deserved. You were sitting on all that equity, for what? You're 62 years old with cancer. How many years do you really have left? David is young. He can actually use that money to build something." The casual cruelty of it took my breath away. "And what do you get out of it?" I asked. Linda smiled. "I'm a full partner in DJL Enterprises. Equal shares. When we flip that building, I'll make more than my ex-husband ever gave me in the divorce." "So it was all about money?" "No, Margaret. It was about fairness. You got everything growing up. Mom and Dad's attention, the better education, the successful husband. You even got the healthy genes, until recently, anyway. I deserved something too." "You think you deserved my son's inheritance?" "I think I deserved a chance at wealth. And David offered it to me. All I had to do was help him manage you." "Manage me?" "The wedding was my idea, actually." Linda looked proud. "I knew you'd fall for it. The romantic story, the tears, the chance to be mother of the groom. You ate it up. What about Jennifer? Was she part of it too?" Linda laughed. "Jennifer is the smartest of all of us. She saw David's potential, but she also saw his weakness, you. She's the one who suggested they get married quietly first, then use a fake wedding to get the money. Brilliant, really. And if I hadn't gotten cancer? What was the plan then?" Linda shrugged. "We'd have found another way. Maybe a business emergency, a medical crisis, a grandchild on the way. There's always a way to get money from guilty mothers." I stood up, my legs shaking. "I need to go." Linda stood too, grabbing my arm. "Margaret, you're going to sign those papers. You're going to sell the house to David, and you're going to go into that facility without a fuss. And if I don't? Then we'll have you declared incompetent. 3 against 1, Margaret. David, Jennifer, and me all testifying about your confusion, your paranoia, your inability to care for yourself. What judge wouldn't believe us?" She was right. Without the recordings, it would be their word against mine. 3 productive members of society against 1 elderly cancer patient. "I'll think about it," I said, pulling my arm free. "Don't think too long." Linda's smile was cold. "Time isn't on your side, big sister." I left her house and walked to Marcus's van. He opened the door, his face grim. "We got it all," he said. "Every confession. Every threat. This is enough, Margaret. We can go to the police now." I looked back at Linda's house. Through the window, I could see her on the phone, probably calling David to report on our conversation. "Not yet," I said. "There's one more thing I need to do." "What's that?" "I need to give them enough rope to hang themselves. And I know exactly how to do it." Ruth was a genius. That's the only way I can describe what she came up with when I told her I wanted them to fully expose themselves. "Margaret," she said, sitting in her living room with Marcus and me, "what if you appeared to deteriorate rapidly? What if they thought you were actually developing dementia? But I'm not. The doctors have confirmed my cognitive function is perfect." "They don't know that." Ruth smiled, and it was slightly terrifying. "I've been a nurse for 30 years. I know exactly how early-stage dementia presents. I can teach you. We'll give them what they expect to see." Over the next week, Ruth trained me like I was preparing for the performance of my life. She taught me the subtle signs, repeating questions but not immediately, slight confusion about dates but not complete disorientation, mixing up names occasionally but catching myself. The key, she said, was inconsistency. Real dementia patients have good moments and bad moments. Meanwhile, Marcus had been digging deeper into David, Jennifer, and Linda's finances. What he found was staggering. "The building they bought?" he said, showing me documents on his laptop. "It's already in pre-foreclosure. They can't make the payments. They're desperate, Margaret. That's why they're pushing so hard now. They need your house to bail them out. They spent all my money already? Not spent. Over-leveraged. They took out additional loans against the building, probably thinking they could flip it quickly. But the market shifted. They're about to lose everything unless they get more capital. Good, I said, and I meant it. Thomas Crawford, my lawyer, had been busy too. He'd drawn up new documents, a trust that would protect my assets, a new will leaving everything to a cancer research foundation, and paperwork to revoke David's power of attorney. But we couldn't file anything yet. Not until we had them completely trapped. The trap was set for Thanksgiving dinner. I called David and invited the whole family, playing the confused but loving mother. I want us all together, I said on the phone, letting my voice sound vague. Like when you were little. Do you remember how you used to help me make the turkey? Mom, that was decades ago. Was it? It seems like yesterday. Or maybe last week? Time is so funny now. I heard him cover the phone and whisper to someone, probably Jennifer. Then he was back. We'll be there, Mom. Linda too. Oh, good. Linda's such a sweet sister. She's been helping me with things. Important things. I can't quite remember what. Another covered whisper. They were buying it. I spent the next 2 weeks playing my role perfectly. I called David twice asking about Thanksgiving, as if I'd forgotten we'd already discussed it. I went to Linda's house and asked her where Robert was, then caught myself and apologized. I left my car running in the driveway for 2 hours, then called David in a panic because I couldn't find my keys. Each time, they became more confident, more careless in their discussions around me. They started talking about me like I wasn't there, making plans for my house, discussing renovation budgets, arguing about which assisted living facility would be cheapest. 3 days before Thanksgiving, Ruth implemented the masterstroke of our plan. You need witnesses, she said. People beyond just us who can testify to what they see. Who? Ruth smiled. What if your entire church congregation saw what your family is doing to you? The plan was brilliant. Ruth reached out to Pastor Williams at my church, the same church where David had been baptized, where Robert's funeral had been held, where I'd volunteered for 40 years. She explained everything, showed him some of the evidence. Pastor Williams was horrified. That sweet boy David? He kept saying. I taught him in Sunday school. That sweet boy is trying to destroy his mother, Ruth said firmly. Pastor Williams agreed to help. He would invite several church elders to my house on Thanksgiving afternoon, ostensibly to check on me and bring communion since I'd missed several Sundays. They would arrive right in the middle of dinner, when David and the others would be most comfortable, most likely to show their true colors. Marcus installed more recording equipment, this time with video in the dining room and living room. Everything would be captured, not just for evidence, but for protection. Elder abuse often escalates when the perpetrators feel cornered. Thanksgiving morning arrived cold and bright. I woke up at 5, not because I needed to start cooking that early, but because I couldn't sleep. This was it. The day I would either reclaim my life or lose everything. I cooked all David's favorites, just like I had for 30 years. Turkey with sage stuffing, sweet potato casserole with marshmallows on top, green beans with almonds, homemade cranberry sauce, pumpkin pie from scratch. The familiar actions calmed my nerves. This would be the last time I ever cooked for my son. They arrived at noon, each carrying wine but nothing else. No side dishes, no desserts, no flowers for the table. Linda was wearing a new designer dress that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment. Jennifer had on diamond earrings I didn't recognize, likely bought with my money. David looked stressed, checking his phone constantly. Mom, the house smells amazing, he said, but he was already looking around, probably calculating renovation costs. We sat down to dinner at 1. I said grace, thanking God for family and health and truth. David shifted impatiently. Linda rolled her eyes. Jennifer typed on her phone. Before we eat, I said, I wanted to talk to you all about something. They all looked up, suddenly alert. I've been thinking about what you said, David. About the house, and Sunset Manor. David leaned forward eagerly. And? I think I'm ready. The relief on their faces was almost comical. Linda actually clapped her hands together. Oh Margaret, that's wonderful. Jennifer gushed. You're making the right decision. When can we do the paperwork? David asked, already pulling out his phone to check something. Well, there's just one thing, I said, serving myself some turkey with shaking hands. I'd like to understand the finances better. How exactly will this work? David launched into an explanation, growing more animated as he spoke. He pulled out documents from a briefcase I hadn't noticed him bring. Sales contracts, already filled out. Power of attorney papers. Admission forms for Sunset Manor with next week's date already entered. They'd come prepared to get my signature today. To lock me away by next week. So I'd sign the house over to you, I said slowly, for $200,000. Which would pay off your mortgage and leave you with enough for the facility deposit, Linda added helpfully. But the house is worth $450,000. Mom, we've been over this, David said, impatience creeping into his voice. Renovation costs, market factors, the speed of the sale. Right. Of course. I pretended to study the papers. And this power of attorney, it gives you complete control over my medical decisions? Only if you're unable to make them yourself, Jennifer said smoothly. Unable like having dementia? They all froze. Mom, David said carefully, no one's saying you have dementia. Aren't you? I looked at each of them in turn. Isn't that exactly what you're planning to say? Margaret. Linda started. That's when the doorbell rang. I'll get it, I said, standing up. Mom, we're in the middle of dinner, David protested. I opened the door to Pastor Williams and 4 church elders. Mrs. Patterson, Mr. and Mrs. Chen, and Deacon James. All people who'd known David since he was a child. Pastor. I said loudly. How wonderful. Please, come in. We were just having Thanksgiving dinner. They filed into the dining room, and I watched my family's faces transform. David went pale. Jennifer's smile froze. Linda looked like she might run. David Hayes, Pastor Williams said warmly. It's been too long. And Jennifer, Linda. What a blessing to find you all here. We were just discussing my future, I said innocently. David thinks I should sell my house and move into a nursing home. What do you think, Pastor? Pastor Williams looked directly at David. I think a son should honor his mother, not plot against her. The room went silent except for the sound of Jennifer's wine glass hitting the floor. What are you talking about? David managed to say. Mrs. Patterson spoke up. We know everything, David. The fake wedding, the stolen money, the plans to have your mother declared incompetent. That's ridiculous, Linda sputtered. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't we? Mr. Chen pulled out his phone. Because I have here an email from Jennifer sent 3 days ago to a contractor, discussing renovation plans for this house, starting December 1st. The email mentions that the current owner will be in managed care by then. Jennifer's face went white. How did you? When you use a contractor who goes to this church, Deacon James said calmly, word gets around. David stood up abruptly. This is entrapment or something. You can't. Sit down, David. My voice was stronger now, my pretense of confusion gone. I have something to tell you. He sat, probably out of shock more than obedience. I don't have dementia. Every moment of confusion, every repeated question, every lost key, it was all an act. I needed you to show who you really are. And you did. Mom. David's voice was small suddenly, like when he was a boy caught in a lie. Don't call me that. You lost the right to call me that when you decided I was nothing but a bank account to raid. I pulled out my phone. Everything you've said in this house for the past month has been recorded. Every confession, every threat, every plan to destroy me. That's illegal. Linda shrieked. Actually, it's not, Thomas Crawford said, walking in from the kitchen where he'd been waiting. Recording in your own home for security purposes is perfectly legal in this state. As is recording someone who's threatening you with elder abuse. Who the hell are you? David demanded. I'm Mrs. Hayes' attorney. And you're about to be defendants in both civil and criminal cases. David turned to me, and for just a moment, I saw my little boy in his eyes. The one who used to cry when he scraped his knee, who needed 3 stories before bed, who told me I was the best mom in the world. Mom, please. We can work this out. We're family. No, I said, my voice steady despite the tears running down my face. Family doesn't drug their mother during chemo to steal power of attorney. Family doesn't fake a wedding to steal $200,000. Family doesn't plan to lock their mother away in a facility to steal her home. It wasn't supposed to be like this, David said desperately. We just needed the money. The business was failing, we were going to lose everything. So you decided I should lose everything instead? You have cancer. Linda shouted. You're old. You were going to die anyway. The room gasped collectively. Mrs. Patterson actually clutched her chest. But I didn't die, did I? I survived cancer only to face something worse. Betrayal by the people I loved most. Marcus walked in then, in full uniform. He wasn't just a private investigator. He was also a reserve police officer. David Hayes, Jennifer Morrison Hayes, Linda Mitchell, he said formally, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit elder abuse, fraud, and attempted grand theft. As Marcus read them their rights, I watched my son's face crumble. Jennifer was crying, mascara running down her cheeks. Linda was screaming about lawyers and lawsuits. Mom, David called as Marcus led him away. Mom, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I turned away. Sorry wasn't enough. Sorry didn't give me back my trust, my faith in family, my belief that love meant something. After they were gone, I sat at my Thanksgiving table, surrounded by my church family. The food had gone cold, but no one seemed to care. Margaret, Pastor Williams said gently, what you did took incredible courage. I looked at the empty chairs where my family had sat. It didn't feel like courage. It felt like grief, but I was alive. I had my house. I had my dignity. And sometimes, that has to be enough. 6 months had passed since that Thanksgiving. 6 months of legal proceedings, court dates, and newspaper headlines. The story had gone viral. Cancer survivor exposes family's elder abuse plot. I became an unwilling celebrity in the elder abuse prevention community. David, Jennifer, and Linda had all been released on bail within days of their arrest. Their lawyers had negotiated plea deals, 2 years probation for the fraud charges, community service, and most importantly, a restraining order keeping them away from me. The civil case was still pending, but Thomas was confident we'd recover most of the money. I thought it was over. I thought I could finally begin to heal. I was wrong. The call came on a Tuesday morning in May. It was my cousin Patricia, whom I hadn't spoken to in 3 years. Margaret, she said, her voice careful, I know you've been through hell, but the family reunion is next month. Your mother's 100-year memorial. You have to come. My mother had died 20 years ago, but our family had a tradition of holding centennial memorials, a celebration of what would have been their 100th birthday. It was meant to honor their legacy, to bring the family together in remembrance. I can't, Patricia. Not with Linda. Linda won't be there. She's been uninvited. But Margaret, there's something you need to know. Something about your mother's death. What are you talking about? Just come. June 15th, noon, at the old family farm, please. The family farm was 2 hours away, in the small town where I'd grown up. I hadn't been back since my mother's funeral. Too many memories, too much pain. But something in Patricia's voice made me agree. Ruth insisted on coming with me. You're not walking into another ambush alone, she said firmly. After everything that's happened, you need backup. The day of the reunion arrived overcast and humid. Ruth drove while I sat in the passenger seat, my stomach in knots. What could Patricia possibly need to tell me about my mother? The farm looked exactly as I remembered it. The white farmhouse with its wraparound porch, the red barn in the distance, the oak tree where Linda and I used to play as children. About 30 cars were already parked in the field. As we walked toward the house, I saw familiar faces, cousins, aunts, uncles, family friends. They all stopped talking when they saw me. Some looked away. Others whispered behind their hands. I was the woman who'd sent her own son to jail. To some, I was a hero. To others, a traitor to family loyalty. Patricia met us at the door. She looked older, grayer, but her eyes were kind. Margaret, thank you for coming. She hugged me tightly. We're gathering in the living room. There's something we all need to see. The living room was packed. I recognized most faces, though there were children and spouses I'd never met. Pictures of my mother were everywhere, young and laughing, middle-aged and confident, elderly and serene. The last photo, taken just weeks before her death, showed her looking frail but happy, surrounded by Linda and me. I found a seat in the corner, Ruth beside me. The room was tense, expectant. Patricia stood up and cleared her throat. Thank you all for coming. As you know, we're here to honor Aunt Rose's memory. But we're also here to address something that's been hidden for 20 years. She pulled out a laptop and connected it to the TV. 3 months ago, Patricia continued, I was cleaning out my mother's attic. She had been Aunt Rose's sister, and they shared everything. I found a box of old videotapes. Home movies from the 1990s and early 2000s. I had them digitized, thinking they'd be nice to share today. She paused, looking directly at me. One of them was filmed 2 weeks before Aunt Rose died. My heart started pounding. My mother had died suddenly of a heart attack at 78. She'd been relatively healthy, still living independently in this very house. Patricia pressed play. The video was grainy but clear enough. It showed my mother's bedroom. She was in bed, looking far sicker than I remembered. And there, beside her, was Linda. Young Linda, just 38 years old then. But what made the room gasp was what Linda was doing. She was pressing a pillow down on my mother's face. My mother's arms were flailing weakly, and then, they stopped. Linda removed the pillow, checked my mother's pulse, then calmly walked to the dresser and pocketed several pieces of jewelry. She looked directly at the camera then, not realizing it was there, hidden among the stuffed animals my mother collected. The room erupted. People were shouting, crying, some were being sick. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Ruth's arms were around me, but I couldn't feel them. Patricia raised her hand for quiet. There's more. The next clip showed Linda at my mother's desk, forging documents. The camera caught her practicing my mother's signature over and over before signing what looked like a will. The final clip was audio only, but it was clearly Linda's voice on the phone. She's gone. Heart attack, just like we planned. No, Margaret doesn't suspect anything. She's too grief-stricken to ask questions. The will leaves the house to me. Margaret gets the worthless farmland. Yes, I'll sell it as soon as the estate clears. Patricia stopped the video. I found the real will in the box. Aunt Rose left the house to Margaret, not Linda. She left the farmland to Linda. But Linda switched them. I stood up on shaking legs. You're telling me Linda murdered our mother? Patricia nodded grimly. The police have already seen this. They're looking for Linda now. But Margaret, that's not all. How could there be more? Patricia pulled out a folder. I also found bank records. Linda had been stealing from Aunt Rose for years. Tens of thousands of dollars. And Margaret, some of those transfers were made to David's college account. The room started spinning. David. My David had benefited from his grandmother's murder. He would have been 18 then, Patricia said gently, as if reading my thoughts. He might not have known where the money came from. Or he might have, someone muttered from the back. I needed air. I stumbled out onto the porch, Ruth right behind me. The revelation was too huge, too horrible to process. Linda hadn't just betrayed me recently. She'd been a monster for decades. She'd killed our mother. She'd stolen my inheritance. And she'd used that blood money to help my son, potentially making him complicit in murder. My phone rang. It was Thomas Crawford. Margaret, where are you? His voice was urgent. At my family reunion. Why? Linda's been arrested. For your mother's murder. The police got a tip about some video evidence. I know. I just saw it. Margaret, there's more. They searched Linda's house. They found journals. She's been planning to hurt you for years. There are detailed notes about poisoning you during your cancer treatment, but she decided it was too risky. The whole fake wedding scheme was Plan B. I laughed. I actually laughed. It was that or scream. Thomas, I said, David knew, didn't he? About his grandmother? There was a pause. We found emails. From when David was 21. Linda told him everything, tried to recruit him to help her get rid of you too. He refused then, but he learned from her. He learned how to betray family for money. Margaret, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. After I hung up, I sat on the porch steps where I'd sat as a child, where my mother had taught me to tie my shoes, where she'd comforted me after my first heartbreak. She'd been murdered in the room above us, and I'd never known. Ruth sat beside me. What are you going to do? I'm going to finish this, I said. Once and for all. I walked back into the house, where my entire extended family was still in shocked silence. I want you all to know something, I said, my voice carrying to every corner. Linda murdered my mother. She stole from her, killed her, and robbed me of my inheritance. Then she helped my son do the same thing to me. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, they say. But sometimes it rolls right back to the poison roots. I looked at each face in turn. I'm done protecting family secrets. I'm done pretending blood means more than behavior. Linda is a murderer. David is a thief and a fraud. They made their choices. But Margaret, an elderly aunt, said, they're still family. No. I shook my head firmly. Family doesn't mean anything if it's used as a weapon. Family doesn't give you the right to destroy someone. My mother died alone, terrified, betrayed by her own daughter. I almost suffered the same fate. No more. Patricia stood up and started clapping. Slowly, others joined her. Not everyone, some still looked scandalized that I would speak so plainly. But most understood. Most had their own stories of family betrayal, just perhaps not as extreme. That evening, as Ruth and I drove home, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. I almost didn't read it, but something made me look. It was from David. Mom, I just saw the news about Aunt Linda and Grandma. I swear I didn't know she killed her. When I was 21, she told me grandma had left her money for my education, but she said it was inheritance, not theft. I was young and stupid and I believed her. When I realized the truth later, I was too deep in her influence. She taught me all the wrong lessons about family and money and loyalty. I know you'll never forgive me, and I don't deserve forgiveness. But I needed you to know. I didn't know about the murder. I'm going to testify against Linda. It won't make up for what I did to you, but maybe it will give you some peace about Grandma. I'm sorry, Mom, for everything. Your son. I know I don't deserve to call myself that anymore, David. I deleted the message without replying. His apologies meant nothing now. Whether he knew about the murder or not, he'd chosen to follow Linda's path. He'd chosen greed over love, betrayal over loyalty. 3 days later, Linda was charged with first-degree murder. The trial would be long and painful, requiring me to testify about both my mother's death and my own near destruction. But I would do it. For my mother. For myself. For every elderly person whose family saw them as a burden to be eliminated rather than a treasure to be cherished. The farmland Linda had inherited and thought was worthless? It turned out to be sitting on a natural gas deposit worth millions. The land she'd killed for, the house she'd stolen, had been worth far less than what she'd dismissed as worthless. There was poetic justice in that. I used the money from the mineral rights to establish the Rose Hayes Foundation for Elder Protection. We provide legal resources, safe housing, and investigative services for elderly people facing family abuse. In just 6 months, we've helped 43 families. Last week, I got a call from a 70-year-old man whose daughter was trying to have him declared incompetent. His story sounded exactly like mine. We got him help, got him safe, got him justice. Every person we save is a victory my mother never got to have. The house feels different now, quieter, but not lonely. Ruth comes by twice a week. My church family has embraced me fully. I'm taking painting classes at the community center, something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for when I was so focused on David. Sometimes I dream about the son I thought I had. The little boy who loved dinosaurs and bedtime stories. I mourn that child even though he grew into someone unrecognizable. Grief doesn't follow logic. You can mourn someone who betrayed you. You can miss someone who tried to destroy you. The heart doesn't understand what the mind knows. But I'm still here. Still standing. Still strong. My mother wasn't able to fight back. But I was. And I did. And I won. That has to be enough. Because sometimes, the greatest victory isn't in winning back your family's love, it's in surviving their betrayal and building something better from the ashes. Thank you for walking this difficult road with me to the very end. If this story resonated with you, you can support our community by sending a super thanks. It helps me continue to bring these important stories to light. On the screen now are 2 more stories that I know will touch your soul. I'll see you in the next one. Stay strong.